Now it's going to have a... Oh, sorry.
There we go.
Live from the Mighty Veedverks Airship, I'm Travis Lippert, CEO of Verks Unlimited Limited, better known as Veedverks.
And I'm Julie Richardson, the Director of Commercialization and Promotion. And today with us we have David Link.
Hello, everybody. David Link. I'm with JDB Advocates, and I'm a rep with Lightpath Capital.
Well, you've been in the industry since the get-go because you were here when it started in the Denver area.
I've been involved full-time for 5 years. So I think there's others that have been there, prior. I was in the natural products industry before then. But yeah, I've been at it a while for sure. Yeah.
Well, when you say natural products, you mean like the food industry, right?
Yeah. Things you buy in Whole Foods.
Right.
Natural section of other stores. Amazon now. Yeah.
Well, we had Carla Boyd on yesterday with Hempway Foods, and she's getting into grocery stores now, and her business is really growing, but then we have another friend that has not just a hemp tea, but then she's putting CBD into products.
Yeah.
Do you see the FDA easing up on CBD and food products?
I think, what I've heard is there's a little bit of a holding pattern right now. The most important thing is to make no claims on your labels. I know there's things said sometimes that make me wonder a little bit, but it seems like if you're selling successfully somewhere right now in the market and you don't make claims that the FDA would require validation on, then I think it seems to me it's going to be sort of lazy, a little bit of status quo or indecision that's going to allow things to continue. That's my take. Yeah.
What I'm afraid of is the FDA is going to set it at a standard, kind of like Tylenol. You have an over-the-counter strength, and then you have a prescription strength. And all of the different companies that have the stronger tinctures or capsules or whatever formulations, they're going to have to really dial theirs back, and it's not going to be as effective.
That could be.
So,
yeah. Should we sort of step back?
Actually, what I'd like to do is, before we get too far into this, is I want to tell everybody that there is a really cool store in Frisco, Colorado called Smoke and Bra, and it's right on Main Street, and it's run by an awesome woman named Stevie Day. And I'm going to pull up something on my phone. Where's that noise? Is that your phone or my phone? Oh, it was your phone.
That's the live video. I'm accepting it on my Facebook.
I'm just going to pull up my phone here real quick, and hopefully this will work.
Now, if you share it, you could possibly do it as a live feed. As like a watch party, I mean.
Here, I've blown that twice.
It's going to take us a bit to... get this all shared out. But
now, which is the best camera for me to look at?
Look at that one.
That one there?
Yeah.
Okay. Unless we're talking, you do a little bit of sort of back and forth?
I don't know. I wouldn't get too concerned about it. So I'm just going to pull up some pictures for, this is on my phone, right?
Yeah.
This is a great store.
Okay.
And
nice.
Right there in Frisco. So Smoke and Bra. Wait. That went off screen.
In fact, we had her on last year about this time.
Yeah, let me pull this down.
It's very eclectic.
There. So it's all local Colorado artisans blowing all this glass. And she sells CBD stuff. Look, she's got our vape cartridges, e-liquids. She might have our lotions there now. And it's called the Smoke and Bra, and so you wonder what the bra part is. In the back is like bras and stuff. So Stevie, the owner of the shop, is taking part in some sort of a competition to be the Inc. magazine cover girl. and if she wins it, then she'll win $25,000, which is really convenient because she's a small business and things are always tight. And it'll help her stay in that cool facility if you guys do that. So I posted a link in the description of this video. And yeah, so please share that out. All you got to do is go there and vote. And she's winning right now. So we just really appreciate Smoking Bra and Stevie Day. And I just want to get that out there real quick. And also, I'm playing Dub Conscious in the background. Adrian Zelski, HGH Seeds, thank you for not making us end up with copyright strike yet. That's awesome. So cool.
Great.
So, David.
Yes. So I gave the more formal introduction of the companies I work with, my company and the investment banking in Los Angeles. But you were asking about this hat.
Yeah, well, I was asking about that hat. Tell us about this hat.
Well, look, this is stories get better with time. I've learned, but this is a Virginia Cavalier hat, and University of Virginia is based in Charlottesville, Virginia. I'm going to be going there next week. This is also where Thomas Jefferson resided, Monticello. He started the University of Virginia. He put quotes all over the place, curriculum, etc. And so there's a lot of history with this town. And then there's been some, things that have happened in the news and in the last 3 years that have brought attention to it. And then they've had success with sports with people we know personally in, say, basketball. Mama being a friend of my son's, I think I mentioned to you. So back about 3 years ago, I thought, well, if I'm going to be helping out Marty at Old Dominion Hemp, I don't know, Marty, if you're out there listening, and Thomas Jefferson's a key part of the history of the story, and I'm going to be a mentor. I said, well, who was the original Cavalier? And that was this gentleman named Prince Rupert, who was from the UK. And I don't know a lot of things off the tip of my tongue, but I think it's fair to say I have a nice picture of him that I pulled down one time, posted, and it was sort of a made up figure for me to sort of model myself about. And I think there's something to be said for a Cavalier being someone to give sage advice and who's been through some wars and is humble. And so that's what the hat's all about. And it's, thanks for asking, Travis.
Well, you have branched out into Canada. And, we're hearing some different things about Canada. We've got several people who follow the Veedverks page that one of them had reached out to us, even wanting us to do a show on Canada and cannabis.
Sure.
And
sure.
So what's the elements out there? What's it feeling like? Is it growing like the U.S. or?
You mean the Canadian market, or you're talking about accessing the Canadian market for capital? Which one? There's two different topics. I'm more prepared to talk about the latter.
Oh, really? Well, let's talk about the latter then.
Well, my observation on the former would be that Canada is a tiny market compared to the U.S., and don't forget that. I think a lot of the news is outsized because of what's going on in the financial markets, driven by the reception there's been in the Toronto and Canadian stock exchanges. So, and since I come from with an MBA and securities licenses, let me talk about the investment side, and someone else can come as far as cultivation. I have heard that there's a massive shortage in Canada.
Yeah, that's what we're hearing too.
Yeah, and Lightpath has an affiliate through JDB in Calgary. Mm-hmm. Who's helping with another client, CBD Global Sciences, that we can talk about too. But so am I not answering your question?
No.
So
yes,
keep going. So I think this is interesting because there may be companies out there, entrepreneurs out there that are wanting to understand financing paths, and I'm going through it with a company that's going to be called CBD Global Sciences. They're doing what's called an RTO, or reverse takeover, with a company called Global NV. JDB has a J named Jim Greenwell, and Jim Greenwell is a real person who lives in South Denver. I've known for 2 decades. humble as can be, has grown companies successfully, and he's become COO of what will be CBD Global Sciences. And hopefully with our investment banking group in Calgary, we're going to help them raise. So this is an important thing. There's this public market dynamic out there, but I think everybody's got to remember, you got to get a foundation in place, whether it's that founding first year in the business, or it's for you got to get some, call it $2 to $4 million, some established base of capital raised, progress made in the business, and so forth. And then at some point you're ready for a public transaction. And that first part is the hardest part, especially if you're a founder who doesn't have endless money that from your own bank account, from your own success, or family resources, or friends, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So what I'm able to say is there may be others that are in early stage, but I can give you a glimpse of what it's like to be a larger company with maybe 4 million plus raised through a sophisticated group, now goes to Canada, and then here's what we're hearing. And we can talk about it with CBD, we could talk about it with Biochar Now. There is lessons to be learned and wisdom to be passed down, and of course well wishes for others in the ecosystem and their ventures, whether we work together or not. So that's what I would say about Canada. And part of what's cool is the broker dealer, the Light Path, which is a broker dealer that allows me to be an investment banker. He's Canadian. So it turns out I have a gentleman who I think is, I enjoy working with Canadians, and I think that's part of why he has been such a joy as a compliance officer with FINRA, right? So anyway, it's exciting to me that I have a group that could engage CBD Global to do their raises. Mm-hmm. And then some of the things I've had going on behind the scenes that I'm unveiling as they come out.
Well, with what you're doing in banking,
investment banking. Yeah.
We constantly, there has got to be at least one, if not two or three, depending on the week, where people in the industry losing their banking, struggling with banking, losing their merchant services, checking accounts.
Well, let me speak to that first. So a previous rendition of JDB was JDB Merchant Bank, and I had a logo, but I don't want to be positioned as a bank, like a bank. But in that journey, we there were some workaround solutions that we worked with some partners, and we closed a few things. We escaped some liability with deals blew up in some cases. But I had all kinds of experience with CBD credit card processing, mm-hmm. the ins and outs and the ugly, horror stories. Certainly in-store cannabis retail credit card processing, banking. But what I concluded for me and for JDB and for Light Path and that focus was, I'm rooting for the banks and others that are smarter than me that can work around and solve those problems. They need to be solved. I just knew that my part of my journey was to learn about the problem and its role in the business ecosystem, but I am now sort of in my lane, which is being sort of a VC advisor with securities licenses. So I can speak to it, and it's unfortunate, and I mean this for our country, that there's not the kind of banking and lending for the industrial hemp industry that's now legal under the Farm mm-hmm. Bill right now, and it's an upsetting thing, and the reality is banks are taking their time to get in, and so that's what I have to say about it. And I think it's taken warriors to work through that. Those that have relied on credit card processing, merchant services. It's taken unbelievable patience on the part of the brand companies like yourselves. That's what I have to say about it. Well, and I'm not smart enough to solve that problem. That's not my lane, right? David Link's over here. This is right next to me, though, and I appreciate it, and we need it, right? Yeah.
Well, you know, they go to you, they get this wonderful investment, they have this wonderful product, and they built this company, but they can't sell anything because they don't have merchant services. It's kind of like
Yes.
hitting a brick wall.
I'm a man of tangents, but Canopy Boulder, some wonderful people with great concepts, crippled by lack of ability to get credit card processing, and it wasn't even close to a license touching business. So it's a personal thing for me. I don't know how else to say it. I want this. I want our country to catch up with the rest of the world. You know, so let's get back to other topics we knew we were going to cover, and make sure we stay on. And then,
you know what I forgot? No, I'm kidding.
You forgot that list?
Huh?
You forgot that list that we made?
No, I made a list. Well, you're involved in a ton of different businesses. So,
yes. Yeah.
Like, one of the big names is Old Dominion Hemp.
Right.
Tell us.
I've told you the story about Prince Rupert, which really is the origin is from my relationship with Marty Phipps, the founder, and my time in Charlottesville, Virginia, and my reflections on the natural products industry and how I could help Marty and how it helped me shape how I help other clients. So Old Dominion, I will not retell the Prince Rupert story, but I will say, let's move to the next phase. What is so important about Old Dominion Hemp and its partners?
Well, what do they do?
Let's stop with what they do.
They're a big name, but I mean, it's not a big enough industry. They're not. Everybody doesn't.
Fair enough. So first of all, it's not CBD. We know that, right?
What I think of is animal bedding.
That's right. That's absolutely right. So we have become an animal company, and so that means. Well, for example, I'll get this off. We've supplied a lot of hempcrete projects. Great friends in the hempcrete industry. Shout outs to those who are out there, John, etc. But we are an animal company, and that's where we focus. So whether it's the bedding, and that would be a horse is surprising volume of bedding compared to other animals, but it certainly goes all the way down to small animals. There's actually hemp bedding in Walmart today. It's not we're more of a Whole Foods brand, a higher end, Charlottesville, Old Dominion, blah, blah, blah. But, and then, so that's the bedding piece. And that's been the core within the equine market with the major equestrian facilities, which has really built the validation. And let's talk about how do you get bedding? It's the same stuff used for hempcrete. It's the herd. So you start with a hemp plant that's grown for fiber, right, and for grain, as I understand it, and these tend to have thicker. And please correct me if I'm wrong. These have thicker stalks. That stalk has an outside, which is generally the fiber and lignins, which I liken to a bark of a tree, and then inside is the herd. And that looks a lot like balsa wood, but it's a nothing like it chemically. It's a high cellulose substance that it turns out you put it into a horse stall or a rat cage. We can get into rats. We're going to go there, or any small animal. Chickens. We're big into the urban chicken movement, and the animal does their business, and it clumps like a cat litter. It absorbs and it starts to decompose right away. It's a cradle to cradle product. So there's literally a concept of cradle to cradle that I know from the natural products world, the Whole Foods world. And this product goes from the stall to the field. And all of a sudden you're growing in the fields, even grass, just, that before the field was too acidic because they were throwing wood. So it's a wood replacement product. And we have a veterinary case for it too, because it's cleaner for the animal. And the whole key to health with animals of this type is respiratory and what they breathe. So we have veterinarians, and we've been published in this really high-end select breeder services, which is where literally the wealthiest people in the world, some of them are friends connected through high school in South Denver and Castle Rock and some of those areas that are into these horses. So then we've got roots. So we also do feed, and we're working on, so when you crush a seed for, I guess, milk or other hemp protein or whatever, there's a cake on the outside, a protein cake, and we're taking those and turning it into an animal feed.
Is it Ediston?
What is it?
Is it called Ediston?
No. Mm-mm. And it's
choose Thomas Ediston brand Ediston for all of your hemp-derived globular protein needs.
Okay.
If you need globular protein, look no further than Thomas Ediston brand Ediston.
Okay, well, we'll have to. Can we make sure to, because we've got. I'll be in Charlottesville. Let's make sure we trade notes on that next week when I get there. So after I spend some time with Thomas Jefferson, we always go out for a round of golf, just the two of us, by the way. Me.
From what I know about the hauntings at Monticello, it wouldn't surprise me.
Anyway, so back at the ranch, we have a high protein, low fat, low sugar, ideal feed, and Old Dominion Hemp is supply constrained, and we pay a lot in shipping because right now we're sourcing from Europe. And we're going to be moving to Kentucky. And then we're going to get into the tobacco belt here in a second. But yeah, we're working on a feed product. And we have the ready-made customers in place. We had the script from the real legends of the industry that we owe any success we have to.
So this
in Kentucky. So and then so tobacco belt's the next topic. Go ahead. And the rail. Great. You want to go there real quick? So well, we feel, first of all, between Charlottesville and Louisville, it's a strip and it's a highway. Don't make me tell you which number highway it is. But anyway, it is literally the tobacco belt. We have a plan. We map it out. We have concentric circles. And others have taken old pictures over time and kept them of what the tobacco belt looked like when they were growing a lot of tobacco. The rail system, rail ties is another topic to not digress on. But basically, we're herd and Old Dominion and bedding is a solution for 70% of the plant matter, let's call it. And we're a needed function to be successful for the industry to be successful. So we feel like we have great responsibilities, not just for our company, but for our partners and for the industry. And that's the way we tell our story. And we're on the herd fiber side here, which has, I think, quite frankly, been harder than the CBD side to the date. Harder to raise money for, less sexy, less easy to understand, and frankly, not enough domestic source.
What'd make it sexier is if you planted a field of hemp with a crop duster.
Yes, maybe. Why? I'm not sure I'm getting it.
It's because just the visual.
Well, if it was planting seeds rather than
do people plant fiber hemp from clone?
If you were gonna drop, you would use biochar. Biochar has created a ball with a hemp seed inside it that you drop and it falls into the ground. Okay, now we're going into biochar.
Yeah. So tell us about biochar.
Okay. Well, let's have a moment and just say hello, Rao.
Hello, Rao.
We all were talking about you and thought, I bet you're having a good day, and we all appreciate our interactions of late. And I think of this topic, I think of you. So, all right, well, let's go to Biochar Now. I first met James Gaspard.
Wait, first tell us what Biochar Now does.
Darn it. Okay, let's start with the basics. We take pine.
Old Dominion does.
So Old Dominion's an animal. Yeah, Old Dominion does animal bedding and animal feed. It's an animal company. We are off of Charlottesville, off of Thomas Jefferson, and off of my pretend friend. So we're done with that. Now we're over here in Biochar. This is in Berthoud, Colorado. I hope I'm doing okay.
You're doing great.
So in Berthoud, Colorado, is a company called Biochar Now, and very simply, we have cheap or very inexpensive or free feedstock called pine beetle kill, wood chips. that we turn into chips, and we burn it in a kiln at 1200 degrees for a long period of time, and then we cool it for a long period of time in an oxygen-free environment with air flowing through it. And so it creates a honeycomb structure that, and the reason we've discovered is really first with the hemp industry, it literally is the housing for the living soil, regenerative agriculture approach that leaders in this area in our industry are pursuing. And they may not be telling everybody, but this is a key infrastructure component to get into your field, so that the good bugs and the bad bugs and the fungus and the molds and the bacteria and everything can sort of live, and the roots and all these things can sort of live within. It creates a structure. And so let's go back to what happens. The wood goes through the kiln, and it goes through a cation exchange, and what comes out is a carbon product. But that cation exchange creates a magnetic quality that absorbs heavy metals. So in the soil, it's in that housing, what resides in there are the bad things like the heavier metals, and then it allows the plant to absorb the good things more quickly. And so the yields are much stronger. It's a killer app that's not known. Now, you got to be committed to regenerative agriculture and be committed to stay away from pesticides and herbicides and other things, ultimately at the end of the day. But so we know about it from friends, and there's some, if we trade enough notes, we know people in common that use this stuff and have had great success. Also in the cannabis sector, indoor growing as well, if they use soil, same thing. And then it turns out it's got those same qualities, help it clean Lake Erie, clean lake. It's basically deal with algae blooms. So the runoff of heavy metals from pollution, from industrial processes, into big lakes now. And you take an unbelievably small amount of biochar in bags, and you float them out in the lake, and pretty soon you've got the Canadian government hiring you to clean up Lake Erie. So that's what biochar. So it's that magnetic quality of absorbing, and then they stay in there for 17,000 years and are sort of rendered. I think it's. I don't have a scientific explanation for why it's safe that there's a mercury inside the biochar for 17,000 years and everyone's okay with that, but it renders it as sort of inert, is what happens.
Could you lay biochar out and then let it absorb or whatever these heavy metals, and then go scrape it off and get rid of it elsewhere, someplace where you're not trying to grow stuff that people ingest?
Yeah, I mean, but I believe what we know is, forget about, I've told you about the lakes, but even so, Waynesboro, Virginia, is right next to Charlottesville, Virginia, right along the Shenandoah River that feeds to Potomac.
How about oil spills? Would it do any good for oil spill remediation?
That is not a top 5 market, so I'm going to pass on saying yes. I will tell you this. It'll clean fracking fluid. It's sort of like the cow discussion.
We have things to talk
about. No, stop for a second. Before you get too excited. So it's sort of like, do you remember Meet the Parents and how it turns out you can milk a cat, you can milk anything?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same sort of discussion here. Yeah. Wait, so get me back on track. What was your question?
Well, it was oil spills and.
Oh yeah. So yes, we can clean. So you can milk anything. We can clean any water with metals in it. The problem in fracking is you create another problem for them. You create a solid with the metals in it when they just had the liquid in the first place to deep inject into the wall, and then they say, well, don't worry about the earthquakes. So basically I think there's still problems with the water after we absorb the heavy metals. So like we don't deal with plastics in water, and there's other contaminants in water that we probably don't absorb, for example. But at the end of the day, what happened in fracking was, we can clean the heavy metals out, but then we create more of a problem, and then we stop talking about that. So unfortunately, there's still commercial practicality. And I've fallen on a couple of swords as far as in my career chasing, things in biomimicry and other areas where In concept, it was much more efficient or much better idea, but you had to deal with the commercial. How do you really commercialize this thing and deal with, get Ford or some big corporation to adopt it and so on. So I've got a few. This isn't my first rodeo, right? So I'm and by the way, if in another prepared session would have biochar to show you, but we could get a picture off the internet in 5 seconds.
I imagine
but
it
it's
looks
literally
like black powder.
It looks like black carbon. It looks like black pieces of shards of pencil, but it's got a magnetic quality to it, and lots of validation in this arena.
Have you screwed around with it yet with magnets?
I haven't.
Have you made art with it?
I haven't. But
Stuff
we got
next time bring me a bunch, okay? Not just a little sample. Bring me a bunch. I want to screw around with it.
If I had not been, I am heading back east to meet with some of my friends, and make a trip. If I wasn't so darn busy, I probably would be more prepared. But I will bring some samples because look, biochar is an important message, in my opinion, to get out into the world. Obviously, I want to see Biochar Now successful, and it'll make sales, of course, but the world needs it, right? And there's a whole mining reclamation discussion in Montana with pine beetle kill in Montana. It's a real estate kind of asset-backed kind of play. The people we've gotten interested from an investment standpoint, I'm very excited about it. Our key is to help James, the founder, get something over the goal line.
Well, I'm really excited about it because you're taking a problem, an almost epidemic problem in the mountains where these beetles are destroying these trees.
True. And
you're trying to, when you're going through the mountains, you just see acres and acres of this gray, dead tree. So you're taking that out. So you're cleaning the land.
Yeah.
And then you're turning it and it sounds like it's very environmentally conscious is the procedure. And going into the kiln, you're not, adding a bunch of chemicals.
Very low emissions.
Right.
Part of the patents involve a ceramic emission stack. So there was a lot of money that's gone into this.
Right.
And now we're taking it to the next stage.
Well, and I'm thinking we've talked to a lot of farmers, and we're thinking about all the farmers that, and I know this in the state where I'm from, who have for generations sprayed fields with toxic chemicals. Yeah. And, and
this is another approach. So we must talk a little bit about my family history. What I haven't told you is on my mom's side, my grandfather, Jack, was MIT, Harvard trained Jewish chemist, and he was the first Jewish chemist hired by Monsanto.
Yikes!
He didn't stay there forever. And he's the non-famous grandfather. Uh-huh. So Biochar Now is an absolute antidote to the glyphosate discussion, in my view. And here, so let's finish one more thing on Biochar Now, and then we got to hit on warfarin a little bit. But Biochar Now, it has I firmly believe. Here's what I will say, without getting too far down into the weeds. We are getting introduced more toxins in our environment. Some of them are really harmful. Some of them are okay. Mm-hmm. Some people are more sensitive than others. There's more things being introduced into our air that we may inhale. There's obviously what we eat that is inorganic, which is probably reasonably safe. Actually, it's the GMO thing. I think the food is, frankly, really pretty safe. It's the farming practices that produce the food that's the issue. It's what does to the plant, and I think there's a lot of confusion there too, by the way. But anyway, keep me on track.
You're on track.
You're on track.
What was the next thing I was going to tell you?
You were going to listen to me tell you that if that stuff is magnetic, you should...
That's not it.
I know, but if your stuff is, if you want to tell the world about it, you got to market it. And I'm telling, if you can put that in water or something and make cool art with magnets, then that'd be a great way to.
Well, I think I might be taking the magnetic thing. This might be too non-scientists oversimplifying with the wrong word.
Okay,
the wood goes through this cation It's literally one word, exchange process, which the biochar then attracts metals, and because of the cocoon-like structure of the biochar, it's like a housing, and it just so that's how the Shenandoah River and DuPont's mercury, pollution is being cleaned up by Biochar Now. So you can lay it on a surface. So anyway, but we got to talk about the supplement side. People say, well, it sounds like activated carbon. Mm-hmm. The big difference is activated carbon turns out it's made from coal. Turns out biochar is made from pine beetle kill. So this is really about returning wood back into the earth, into the soil. So let's talk though quickly about supplements, okay? Because we got to go there. Mm-hmm. You guys are there or close to there.
Health and beauty
you're about products that people consume. So we're around toxins, and let's say they're in our body, and it really doesn't matter what's going on outside. It's what's coming in. Well, you could, as a cow that might be going towards beef, or you could be as a human living your life, take a supplement that includes biochar, and quite literally, it could be with other things, but it goes through. You don't digest the biochar, but that cation exchange and the attraction it does to the heavier metals in your system, and then it goes right out your backside, and it is a cleanse on a daily basis potentially, which might be the only way to really deal with the toxins that were being introduced into our environment. We have no control over just because we're here in this spaceship or planet Earth. So, and then in the cow scenario, it gets into, you sell it into the mouth, it comes out the cow's backside, and it's part of the manure that's sold, and the manure is more effective in the agriculture application, even with the heavy metals residing in the biochar. Let's get a scientist in the room. But these are all things we have discovered in our due diligence from the investor side. So all that said, you'd think it was a slam dunk to finance it. Well, they've gone through some fits and starts with some different efforts, and we aren't over the goal line yet, but there's some sturdy incumbent investors, and we're getting interest from the right places. And I always preach, look, it's not just get this thing funded, but let's get funded with people that we want to work with, as opposed to we might have a group that, or it's not uncommon. They want to come in and forget about advisors or board members. You as CEO, I mean, they're ready to replace the whole shooting match with their team and control it. And this company, in this case, they have certain things they won't do. They won't give up control. So we're finding the right match. But we've presented at Coors Field and so on. But I'm very fond of James, and I have there's a common theme that ties to Marty at Old Dominion, James at Biochar Now. We get along, and I have a certain skill set or piece of my repertoire that adds value to what he's trying to do. And James is one smart individual, and again, I feel like it's a moral imperative that Biochar Now gets funded. And if I could personally write the whole check for, say, $6 million, with terms and the right people around the table, I would do it. Unfortunately, I've taken a model where I work with investment funds, and so I have to persuade others. And I think it's a better model for me. But if I had the funds, I would end some of this nonsense that I see out there.
I'm surprised nobody's come out with a biochar with CBD pill yet.
Well,
have you thought about adding CBD to your biochar?
Are you kidding me?
I mean, if you don't do it, who's going to do it? Somebody.
Well, we are going to do it. We are going to do it. Okay. I mean, so Elite Health is another company we didn't get into, which is back to an old friend of my dad's from Boulder and so on. But we are already. I have a very close relationship with a big private label, contract manufacturer and gun barrel, basically, and they're fully aware of it. So. Biochar Now has to tackle first things first. And so I think this human supplement is probably fifth on the list. But I think it could eventually Gosh, I don't know. You think about an approach where you price it really low so that everybody takes it and everybody can afford it somehow. And that you don't try to take advantage of anybody somehow.
You still have to make them want it, and that's going to take money, so you can't price it too low.
And some people, and some people, well, that may be so. We can get into that, but some people either don't have the means or even the desire to get better from their circumstances or whatever, and so they're not going to spend money to cleanse themselves of heavy metals every day because they've got bigger problems or they just can't afford it. Frankly, they just in a lot of cases just can't. You just can't afford it. Like supplements are an extra, right? Yeah. But no, at the end of the day, from what I've learned, well, we're doing a huge test in Texas with a huge set of cattle. So it's not just my poor attempts to explain the science.
All right, I have a question on that.
Let's lay it down.
All right, he had brought up, to spread biochar all over a field, and then he said scoop it up. But then you're talking about the manure, and from what, if it goes into manure, it would make sense.
Pellets. You could put like manure pellets.
So this continues to work and protect for...
Actually, once it's in your field...
Period of time? Or?
Well, I was going to say, so as I understand it, you try to get your field to 10, that's a 10% level of biochar measured, and it's critical to have it at the roots of the plant. So it doesn't have to be everywhere. And you start and you phase it in. So there's two conversations. There's how do you apply biochar to your field as a farmer, and what's ideal for growing. Resource constraints left off the table, let's just say. And there's the conversation of Biochar Now, which is a business just like you all, going, okay, wait a minute. Our product lasts 17,000 years. It's way too good for the hemp market. How do we price this? And how do we? And by the way, people don't always pay, slow pay and all the things, all the challenges of trying to do business in the industry. So I think
I have the solution to that problem.
Yeah, but in any event, look. So I think I probably said too much, but I think it's an infrastructure to living soil that you don't mess with, and then the microbes, for one, multiply and pop, and there's a company called Key to Life. Anyway, I've gotten to know some of these microbe companies, and they live happily within the biochar structure. And from a business model, Biochar Now has to find new fields to inoculate, basically. So in other words, it's not a recurring business. It's not the most convenient razor blade business model.
How much is it per acre?
That
from the farmer.
Now you're getting out of what I would quote, because I could get that information, but I'm good. This is when I start to say in my lane, so there's a lane, and on Old Dominion Hemp, I can quote prices almost. Would you say, but that's about the only company where I'm comfortable doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just trying to figure out if it's something like is it something where you can just pay for it that year, or is it something like buying windows on your house and like an
I think there's an element of it's perceived. I got direct feedback from someone we mentioned 10 minutes ago that there is word out there that it's expensive. The people that tend to grow with it tend to, I think, generally have more premium, or even are striving to be organically certified.
Yeah.
So, but I think at the end of the day, long term, it pays off great, obviously, for the environment, but it once you're in. So it's really it's, populate the field with biochar, then move to the next field, move to the next state, etc., and grow with people. So when we look at the business model, we're mindful of that.
So
whereas supplements, we of course we want everybody in the world to eat our supplement and take it once a day.
So your business is the machine. That's the core of your business.
The core of the business is kilns on pieces of land, and potentially on tribal lands. We could have a whole sovereign biochar discussion.
Oh, that would be exciting.
And sovereign hemp discussion, at least conceptually, as well. But yeah.
So you got to get the wood, you got to get the feedstock to the machine. It's the same thing as like hemp processing.
To a kiln.
Right? To a kiln.
It's a kiln.
How much space does it take up, the kiln? Is it?
You guys would make up about, if you stood up, you'd be about the width of a kiln. It's not that big. If I kind of did it wrapped around you.
Dump wood chips into a big hopper.
And then the key is no oxygen and at really high temperature for, I think it's 10 hours or something. And then cooling for a long time with no oxygen involved. And they have airflow at the same time. So the guy who designed the kiln had a background in computer storage, sold his company. They're from Berthoud, Loveland area. And this gentleman, Bill, who I knew from my early venture capital days, he had probably visions of how a microchip works, partly when they thought about this. But they were able to patent the process of making the biochar. And it took a lot of money and time to do it. But I first met James 5 years ago at an ArcView conference.
Really?
In Chicago, of all places. But we've always stayed in touch. But I didn't know how to help him until recently, when Jim Greenwell and I both kind of dug in there.
What's the beetle kill pine wood chip supply market like?
Endless.
You got like multiple vendors selling wood chips?
It's endless.
What are they selling them for?
It's often they're trying to get it off their hands. There's a whole forest management discussion and pundits and other things that were on Facebook. But at the end of the day, we can be integral to forest management and sweeping and some of the things that will actually help. So you could get proactive with forest management and fires. But at the end of the day, we take wood from places that it needs to go. Because there's other situations like up near Nederland where there's it's Gross Reservoir and they're needing to clear some area. And I'm a Boulder native, and I guess I've been a tree hugger to some degree or form or fashion. But there's people who don't want trees cut down up there under any circumstances. It doesn't matter, and that's irresponsible.
Even dead trees?
Well, no, these are in some cases live trees. But they need to clear some places. They have to have a plan to clear some stuff, and we can be part of that solution. I mentioned other things too, but all right, but let's stay back. Let's make sure we stay on hemp.
Well, that's my next question, is because you have trees take a long time to grow, and then if beetles kill them, then there's a finite supply, even though it seems like it's endless up in the mountains, of beetle kill pine trees, and then
right now if you go to the site,
replace it with hemp. Is that?
Oh gosh. From what I know, there is cross section with biochar and hemp. I can't speak with the authority about using hemp as a feedstock like I can with wood.
Well, farmers have been burning fields for nutrients for years and years and years. It's what they do in the South.
And then it creates biochar.
Yeah. And, I'm thinking of like the sugarcane fields are burned, and they just till it under. And I'm thinking this biochar, that would be like the super concentrated version of it.
Well, the problem is they're burning in an oxygen-rich environment,
right,
and they're creating soot. And so what we've seen is so I have direct knowledge of people who don't use Biochar Now brand and use some other biochar, and there's a difference. So that's why there's belief that the patents and their process and everything is valuable, because others can't just do it because they'd be violating our patents. And smart people and a lot of money went into it. So anyway, so I think we'll see what happens. But I think it's an important thing, and I'm pleased with the progress we're making there. And I feel privileged to be part of it. And it is not easy out there. That's what I would say. Now, let's make sure we talk about Yumhai. And can I quickly I just want to, I don't know how many people are listening or will listen, but we haven't mentioned my family story. But very quickly, I'm blessed with the story from my family that involves one of the greatest medical innovations that there's ever been, basically. And it was from a mold. Penicillin. It's not penicillin, but it's almost as big. And my grandfather was an agricultural chemist back in the 30s and the 40s in Madison, Wisconsin. And in any event, I go back to the fact that they were able to isolate. So the story was cows were eating moldy sweet clover hay, mold, and they were bleeding to death. And then they were able to isolate a molecule from that discovery process with the best equipment that my grandfather had brought back. His name was Carl Link. He had brought it back from Austria, and they isolated a molecule from mold and named it after the Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation. And there was a big there was a big problem with rats and mice on farms at that time, and basically they would set bait from this molecule and they would use it to poison rats and go to, so my grandfather was very comfortable in the field, and I always thought that was cool. And then I had a great uncle who was a cardiologist, and they several cardiologists identified fairly early on that there was a problem out in the world where people were getting blood clots and dying, and they didn't have a solution for it. And this was a blood thinner. I mean, they could see that it was killing cows. They could see that it would make a rat bleed to death. So so I had it goes back to two ladies that married two men. The ladies were from Madison. I had my grandmother Lisa, my aunt Evie. Aunt Evie marries Uncle Shep. He's a cardiologist from New York. He gets a batch of dicumarol. And at that time it was just known to be rat poison. They said, well, how are we going to turn this into a human medicine? Anyway, there's a whole story around fighting the establishment to introduce a rat poisoning to the world and to humans, basically. And then,
Wisconsin.
Anyway,
wait, I want to.
Yeah, please.
Wisconsin Alumni. What is it?
Research Foundation.
And Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation, WARF.
Yes.
They're the first four letters in warfarin, and now you know the rest of the story.
That's it. Well, so we got to tie the Denver piece and the military piece.
Okay.
Which is, so 55, Eisenhower is president. He's at Cherry Hills Country Club golfing. He's married to a woman from Denver. I don't know her name. And he wasn't the healthiest guy. Apparently smoker, drank a lot, whatever, ate whatever he wanted. And basically had a heart attack. I think there were some missteps when you look at what happened in the early hours after he had, our president's golfing at the nicest golf course in the city. And they saved his life, and they said, we've got this Coumadin, it could prolong your life. And there was, as family legend goes, some consultation with my great uncle Shep, who was a cardiologist, my grandfather, who was the person who was chiefly responsible for isolating the molecule. So, and it turned out in 52 that Stalin had been poisoned with warfarin. I can find 5 sources where that's been reported now. So we talk about Stalin as being a rat potentially as well. So rats, betting, you get it.
Yeah. I do.
So anyway, but here's what's important. We impart a lot of this wisdom upon one client in particular, Yumhai, which is based in Israel. Scott, I don't know if you're out there, or Lori, or they're probably the two that would know, would be on here if they were. And that's where we get into CBD products, possibly with THC, possibly with other botanicals, and medical validation. Probably easier to do and sell and get traction in everywhere but the United States of America. But anyway, with all the D-Day and the Memorial Day, and then with you all asking me to come out here, I think these stories seem to weave together. I care a lot about agriculture. I care a lot about helping try to solve problems. Some of them, sometimes they feel bigger than me and I get tired, but I'm excited about what's in front, and it's client driven. So I think just to plug out there, you've got a product that cures cancer or cures psoriasis, maybe a topical. So topicals are a little easier than things you ingest. Well, you could say, look, I'll go to Yumhai, who's part of ICANN. So I'm involved with 2 accelerators. One is Canopy Boulder, but the other is ICANN. And I'd like to be able to claim that I cure cancer, or at least get doctors to recommend this and we can go through clinical trials. We call it clinical trials as a service, and we can help you make claims and license your product in other countries.
Wow.
So that's what Yumhai is about. And we want to be friends with many. But there's a lot of this going on right now. So go back to coumadin and warfarin. It was obvious, I think, at some point, and I was told this. It's part of the my great uncle got a little disgruntled. It was obvious this rat poisoning might help humans. I think it's very obvious this plant might help humans. And so you have a lot of smart doctors, scientists, Israel, Canada, US, wherever. And what I'm imparting upon the folks I'm working with is what's going to win is a trusting team, a brain trust, a collection of IP, and maybe, at least in my case, I'm taking no individual credit. I'm just trying to help guide the team. But I think it's more about who you're trying to do it with and the advantages you can take advantage of, say, in Tel Aviv and Israel, and the ways that they're ahead of the game and so on. So, but when you're a doctor and you know it's obvious that this mold on sweet clover hay or this cannabis plant or whatever can help humans, the race is on, and people are going to, in some cases, be capitalistic or show signs of greed or other things, and that's unfortunate to me. And I just try to do my work and do good things and create strong client relationships and help my clients succeed and just let the rest take care of itself. But I've been through the disillusionment phase on capitalistic greed, and I still have to fight it off daily.
Warfarin with CBD.
In biochar.
In biochar.
Well, no, see now why?
Hey,
a lot of people, I was gonna say, hopefully people don't need an anticoagulant. Now, I will say I have my Uncle Tom, Madison, my mother just got off of, they both were longtime warfarin patients. I hope that's not as automatic that you get to your 70s and you need an anticoagulant. So that's part of my regimen as I get healthier, as I get older. But thanks for listening to that story. But look, I think I've got some big figures in my past that I can look up to and reflect on, and it's made me more comfortable with where I sit in all of this. And I think what's most important is that I can be valuable in the world every day. Take these stories, whether it's, Thomas Jefferson, or it's my grandfather, or, well, it's around what I do today and how I try to care for the message and my mission. And I always felt like I'm trying to do this I'm trying to do it almost without taking any credit. It's been very subtle. So when people ask me about my marketing materials and what do I want to accentuate about my firm, well, I'm really just selling me, and then all the interconnected parts behind me. My Canadian partners, my folks in Los Angeles that I mentioned to you. I like being part of what I consider a rogue broker-dealer, meaning he wants to participate in the cannabis industry. He's actually wanting a rep on his platform to be successful in industrial hemp and cannabis, and that he's encouraged me, this is FINRA basically, to tell my story. Pictures of my, you can imagine the pictures I can play with, when you get Eisenhower in there, or Stalin, or my grandfather, whatever. But I think it's getting to a fun place. But I'm hardened from the challenges too. So I expect
tempering, sir.
I expect great things from the people I work with. I expect responsiveness. I expect people to at least close the loop.
You sure I don't owe you a phone call?
We weren't meant to connect until Julie put the pieces together. That's what I'm saying. No, that's not true. I don't know. We've kept in great touch.
I just wanted to make sure that
No, you haven't. I got no hidden agenda here.
I know why you're thinking that.
Why?
Because we've discussed calling, there were times where we had talked about bringing different money people together to the table.
No, I mean, just literally, you just looked at me when you said it before and then said it again, but you said a big problem in the industry is that you're just looking for people who will return your phone call. And
Well, I mean, I think there's some old-fashioned things that have gone by the wayside. Face to face is if possible. If not, then because it is a distributed world, a lot of my stuff goes on in a very distributed fashion. But there's just nothing like getting on the phone for 5 minutes and talking through something with two people who are passionate about an issue and both have their view, and then they can sort it out. And rather than going back and forth on email and coordinating a call, I mean, you can do all that, but I think I've gotten in the habit of just pick up the phone. Like, did I do that to you? Maybe I did. Maybe. Well, anyway, I just and I think
no, I called you.
And I've gotten more facile with so many areas of the industry that I feel I can take an impromptu call, or I can and then the powers of things like Google, in the platform for JDB, what it allows me to do, I prefer working in that online format, and it allows me to operate much bigger than I am, and I think in some ways I've arrived with all the things I wanted to work. I just want things to happen faster, and I'd like to see the capital flowing to the beyond CBD craze as well. But I'm fully in the CBD craze too, and my point there is, basically, I get the pleasure of working with Jim, who is the man on record with the fundraising, and who's who I'm going to get to go to have follow up as once the money goes in. He's the guy that's at the board meeting saying all the things that investors need to hear. So you get I sort of call it bringing a gun to a knife fight. I think there's still people out there that don't have enough sophistication within their team, and they've got to upgrade. And that might mean, and it's very doable to pick up a partner that wants to get into this industry. And I would pick one that has deep pockets themselves, because the hardest thing is that friends and family stage, and the ones that are the most successful have those deep pockets to write. Especially on the cannabis side, we saw it with all the 280E and the IRS activity and the regs every other day, and you just more check. So I'm sure everything's cost them twice or more of what they thought, the big dogs, right? But they became big dogs because they were big dogs before they even got here. They had a big war chest. And I think,
that's the best way to start any business, is with a giant pile of money and no worries.
That's right.
All you got to do is think about stuff.
Did I just say the obvious?
Happen.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I don't know what else you all. I think we've covered the main clients. I appreciate your interest in my activities.
Well, we appreciate you coming on.
Real quick, do you believe in Sasquatch? No?
I'm not sure. I know enough to have a firm. What I will say is I immediately think of the Sierra Nevadas. Am I off base?
No, they're
okay.
They might be everywhere.
And I will say that there are things going on in the Sierra Nevadas area which seem to correlate to this miraculous recovery of the drought, which seems to correlate to the military and the Air Force. There's all these correlations, but I can't quite
connect all the dots.
Well, if you're out there in those beetle kill pine trees collecting your biochar feedstock, and you see a bunch of trees all stacked together in crazy patterns, maybe that's not so random. That's all I'm saying.
I will say I do believe in Sasquatch.
Just all right.
I don't think you should mess with them if that's what you're asking.
We are running late on time. You're supposed to be out of here by now. I had the timer was set for 2:15. It is 2:22.
What's going on?
So, unless you know any jokes, then I guess we'll sign off.
We got Bubba over here paying a visit. No, hey, thanks for having me.
Speaking of jokes, right?
Thanks,
Dave. Appreciate that.
What is that?
Yeah.
Speaking of jokes, we got Bubba.
Well,
Bubba sitting over here.
All right, guys.
All right,
It's
David
2:22.
Link, thank you very much for joining us. Old Dominion Hemp. How do you say it? I wrote it Yum Chai, but it's Yo-Hi.
Yum hi.
Yum Hi.
Yum hi.
Biochar Now, CBD Global Sciences, all sorts of stuff.
We didn't talk about Black Dog LED.
I'm not out of time.
We didn't
I'm
talk
under the
about
impression
Colorado
you're-
biomass. Yeah, we've got a few other things.
Well,
but
you'll
yeah,
have to come back.
I'll have to come back.
Maybe next time you'll
uh,
be talking about Thomas Edison brand hemp-derived globular protein.
We need to talk. We need to talk about, and this is probably the most important point to end on: sovereign hemp and sovereign biochar. And I don't know exactly what that means in terms of the details, but I do think there are some people I know that would be interested in further conversation. And anybody selling hemp products, when you think about marketing, it would only be to your advantage, and you would want to make it also to the advantage of your sovereign partners to have that tie. So like if I'm buying your product, I'm giving, in a sense, back to the Native Americans, the tribes, whatever the right vernacular. I don't mean, and by the way, I realize when you're on live video, you can say the wrong thing, but I think this conversation needs to be there, but from the right place. But I do think the sovereign topic is a big one that no one brings up as much as we should.
Well, let's bring that up, because that's something I definitely want to talk about, because there's been...
Well, and hemp, and then that's a shout out for Rick Trojan and Hemp Road Trip, and being responsible for my, being at Pine Ridge when I was a few years back. And, some things I just haven't had the resources to fix, or the time, but most of the resources. But they weigh on me. I don't forget about them.
Right.
I don't forget about that trip. I will never, and I've connected with Alex and others when they come to Denver. But I'd like to get back there. But it's just we're all so busy.
Is that the same tribe that had to have their fields burned?
Yes, he was there in
that just tore my heart
Manderson,
out.
South Dakota.
Little backstory on that is, didn't they have to give up for the Native American tribe, they had to give up all of their government resources for them to do it? Probably. They had to walk away from everything to grow the hemp, and then they were just so manhandled and threatened and treated so wrongly that right before harvest they burned it all.
Yeah, every time within 10 days of harvest they destroyed it.
Right.
For several years in a row. And then when they finally got to harvest it, they found radioactivity in the water that they used to feed it.
Well, there's a whole history with. I journaled about this during Hemp Road Trip, and shared those posts with the people at Hemp Road Trip and that we met there. But yeah, the first thing you learn about is that the whole area is contaminated with uranium, and that's number one. There was a uranium mine in Nebraska, as I recall, and somehow it was downstream from Nebraska. And so that's like the first thing you learn, is that you're like living in an area contaminated. And then you learn about mistreatment of women in urban places, and you hear about alcohol abuse that's often combined with promiscuous behavior, and it's not good. There was pony races, Lakota pony races I've been witness to, and my only regret right now is I haven't done enough. Have I really done anything? I mean, I've certainly made friends and shared the word on Facebook as much anything, but there's much more that needs to be done. But yeah, though I have to give credit to Rick Trojan for, frankly, insisting we drive from Los Angeles to Portland, Oregon to South Dakota. And he somehow missed out on like a major leg of that, but I'm glad he did. I mean, we would love to have. I'm just saying, we were tired heading into South Dakota, and it really was the best part of the trip.
You guys were part of the pipeline?
Well, there was 3 legs, but I was part of a West Coast trip, and I met people including Nutiva, John Rulak, and other. We went to Patagonia.
Nice.
My only, if I had to grade myself, is I haven't done enough for some of these other people that I've met. I haven't necessarily engaged them. I haven't raised money for them. I haven't given them any advice. Or maybe we tried to do credit card processing or some other thing and it didn't work or whatever. But yeah, no, I mean, I journaled extensively starting in Charlottesville 3 years ago at my son's graduation. That's where this whole thing, we get back to Prince Rupert. So anyway, well, listen,
David,
It's been awesome.
thank you.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks everybody for joining. I have NASCAR news, but it'll wait for tomorrow.
Yes.
But we're moving forward. We're gonna gamble. We're gonna see. We're gonna find out. And
You're a gambling man, I've learned.
I bet on myself, and I bet on Colorado's industry. I think that it'll take more time to talk about, but NASCAR is definitely a story right now. We're living it. So
Good.
news will leak out as it occurs.
Yeah.
I'll definitely talk about that tomorrow.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks for joining, everybody. As always, I'm Travis Lippert, reminding you, if you don't get hemp here, get hemp somewhere.